welcome to our Principal's Coffee at HCC Crittenden. Thanks for being here today. We're hoping to do two things today. One is to share the budget, the proposed budget with you. And we also have, it's being filmed so that we can share this out later. So we have two audiences. So we're going to share the proposed budget, and that will be with Dr. Lamia and Mr. Siebert. And also we are going to be going over humanities and how that looks, what that looks like at the high school, and how the middle school and high school connect, how our curriculums work together. It's outstanding, the work that our chairs have done in leading this, and I'm very excited that they'll share it because we're quite proud. So we're going to have the district office go first.
Thanks, Kim, and hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We will be brief. I have spoken to so many parents, Kim, though, that have talked about actually tapping into these meetings virtually online after they're recorded, and they're finding them really beneficial. So I'm glad that we're doing this for our community. And if you have any other questions about the budget after we present for a few minutes today, you can certainly look at any one of the taped budget hearings that we have. The board just adopted this budget last Tuesday, which means that they've adopted our recommendations to go out to a public vote. So you can always take a look at any of those videos. Mr. Seibert and I will be happy to sit with anyone who wants to talk about the budget. We'll do that if you really want a little more of an in-depth explanation of it. But we are proud of our budget this year. Our proposed budget is $99,725,037. Our budget-to-budget increase is 2.87%. We will explain. What does the budget include? So we have all programs and services that support student success. Even though we're a district of about 2,300 students, we are proud of the programs that we've been able to create and continue with. A lot of these programs, at least at the 6th through 12th grade level, are happening in part because of our chair people who are here today. You'll learn a little bit about their programs. We have exceptional programs at the high school in science research and global scholars, both of them a 3-year program. We have a 2-year program called Startup, an entrepreneurship program that just started this year. And that has taken off with flight. And what our budget is able to support is that we are able to look at kids and say, what do kids need in this world today to help propel them forward? What are the skills they need? What are the opportunities that we can afford them so that they are equipped to go out into the world and do the thing they're actually passionate about? I don't know how many people feel fulfilled in their job, right? I talk to many friends who say, yeah, like, I wish I were doing something else. I'm thoroughly fulfilled in my job, and we want your kids to feel fulfilled in whatever endeavor they have. And that comes from giving them that opportunity now. So we have federal and state mandated programs. All of our athletic programs remain. We've also added programs. Rob Castagna, the director of athletics, saw a desire for girls to play flag football. We have a whole flag football team. We have some special education classes that now have AU sports. Last year they did, and the year before they did basketball, and now we have bowling, right? So we are continually adding volleyball, modified sports, intramural sports during the school day. This is what kids are asking for, and we're able to deliver it. Extracurricular programs remain. So many at the middle school and the high school. It's hard to find a student at the high school who goes home right after school on a regular basis, right? And we want that. We want kids to be in the schools and engaged. And all of our transportation services remain. This is important. We own our own transportation fleet, unlike a lot of other districts. This is helpful to us because we can schedule all of the extracurricular activities. We can schedule all of the trips that are happening within school. We can look at our own demographics and say, as a district, we would like the buses to operate in this manner and not be subject to an outside bus company that's going to regulate that our kids are going to have a 1 hour or less ride to school every day, right? So these are some of the benefits that come out of that budget. And this is the time where I usually take over for Kelly. Kelly, go.
Just quickly, the budget is broken down into 3 components. Program, capital, and administrative. Our largest component is program. It's the salary, the benefits, equipment, supplies of everybody essentially who has interactions with students. Your teachers, your teacher aides, your psychologists, including your bus drivers as well. That's 73%. Next largest category is capital at 15%. That's your custodial and maintenance staff, really the upkeep of your buildings and your facilities, your utility costs, your debt service, all that stuff to upkeep and maintain your buildings is capital, is 15%. And finally, administrative, anybody with supervision over students and staff, your principals, your APs, your directors, chairpersons.
Our
Your
accountants.
auditing, legal fees as well. So that's 11%. Those are the three components of the budget.
And they're pretty typical.
Yep.
And I would like to say that for capital, for example, we have $2.5 million that's in that $15 million number. That is a bond that we have been repaying for like 27 years, right? So what happens is most districts that you will go to, they will defer maintenance costs, and then they will take out a large bond to cover things like air conditioning or redoing roofs or boilers, right? All of those very expensive items. We have not taken out a bond in 27 years because we've been putting that money into capital to take care of things as they are happening. We have an in-house electrician, an in-house plumber, an in-house carpenter. So a lot of the work that you see that gets done here gets done by our employees, which if you've tried to hire anybody out to do anything in your home, you recognize like the inflation and the high cost of doing that. The other thing is we've been able to put air conditioning in all of our schools by having money in the capital without going out for another bond that extends out for another 30 years. We've done roof repair. We have a $500,000 pipe that we are installing in the road to replace a pipe underground to go to Coman Hill this coming summer, right? So that is all coming out of that capital reserve, and we're not deferring all of this maintenance, which is why our facilities look good, why we know about our air quality, while we know about what kind of filters we're having in. This is nothing that we're trying to defer.
And Dr. Lamia, I'd even say that just recently our library,
Just
our media
yesterday.
center, just completed their AC, and it was hot in the summer, and it was something we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do, but it's a space that's really used, and it's sometimes used by camps, and so everyone benefits from this, and so we now have AC in the library. Thank you.
Yep. You need it. I mean, all you have to do is go into a classroom or a room on these hot days and see that red-faced child and say, how is it possible that that child is actually learning today, right? It's impossible. All right.
All right, so here's a breakdown of the expenses. Salary and benefits, almost 80% of our budget, similar to other districts, between 70 and 80%. As Jen spoke about, our contractual services, 14%, a lot smaller than a lot of other districts because we do own our own buses, and we do have a plumber and an electrician in-house, so we don't have to send out for those services. But that contractual service is basically anything we can't do in-house. BOCES is an example. We send students to BOCES, or other services, professional development that we bring in. That's a contractual service.
Our whole media and communication center is within that contractual service as well.
Exactly, good point. Debt service is generally speaking about 2.6%. We still have 3 more years of payments, and then that debt service will be paid off. Similar to your mortgage, you pay it off, and then you have no more debt. We're getting there soon. 2.5% of supplies and equipment. Finally, maintenance projects at 1.7%. That's what Jen was speaking about. In the budget, we maintain our buildings, whether we replace a section of a roof and the water pipe next year, or sidewalks, or a boiler. It's in the budget every year, so we can do it without doing a big project and having to borrow money. And then the red is state aid. We get 5% of our total revenue from state aid. The majority of our revenue we receive to pay for the budget, 88%, comes from our property taxes, our tax levy. 4%, which is right here, comes from fund balance and reserves.
And wait, and this right here is the amount that we get from sales tax, et cetera.
It's
No?
close. It's pilot.
Oh, pilot, darn it.
Thank
This
you.
is sales tax.
Yes.
Okay.
Pilot is 2%. We have 2 pilots,
Good job,
Ingle
Dwayne.
Berman.
Thank
That was
you.
very good. Ingle Berman and he was here yesterday. Ingle Berman and IBM pilot.
hear
That's
that.
2%, and then 1% is our county sales tax and our interest earning that we receive in terms of revenue, which has increased in the last couple of years. Hopefully, the rest of the slides are okay.
And the 88%, so if you look at the difference between Byram Hills and some other schools in Westchester, 88% of our taxes come from our taxpayers. You're not going to find that in every single district. It'll be similar in similar districts, but across the county, it's a little bit different. So what happens is We don't get the state aid, we don't get the foundation aid that a lot of other schools have. We had some schools, there's something called foundation aid. There are some schools that had like $8, $9, $11 million in foundation aid that was given to them this year. So, you know, when this goes out to our public, we have to be concerned about what is the impact on our taxpayers. That's right, Kim.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, we know it. Total revenues, go ahead, Kelly.
You're ready to go.
I
Total
know.
revenue, so this is just the dollar amounts, an increase in the tax levy, again, what's going to be presented to taxpayers. It's an increase of $1.6 million. That $1.6 million will be spread throughout the taxpayers in the 4 towns. It's an increase of 1.93%.
So even though our budget-to-budget increase was
87%.
2.87%, the amount that goes out to the taxpayers is 1.93%. Because we use the rest from our fund balance, which is what we carry over from year to year, and our reserves to balance that budget, so that we're not going out with 2.87% increase.
Right, we're making up that difference that we need, 2.87 in these categories here. Other revenue, which is again, is county sales tax, our share, and then interest earnings. State aid, we get an additional 14% increase in state aid, about $600,000. That's not due to additional aid we're receiving, it's a change in the formula for transportation aid. We have our own transportation, we get reimbursed for that from the state. That ratio's changed a little bit due to our increased enrollment, so we're getting more back for what we're paying. And then finally, fund balance, an increase of 16%. And then I think I skipped pilots. Pilots went down about 7%, Eagle Berman, and the new IBM pilot, there's a reduction in that pilot payment going forward. So that's how we get dollar-wise to that total budget, 2.87. And then tax rates, 86% of our properties in the town of North Castle, about 4,000 properties. 2.61% increase in your assessed value of $1,000. Remember, there's assessed value, what you're taxed on, and market value, what you can sell your house for. 2 very different things, okay? So that increases 2.61% for the town of North Castle. Newcastle and Bedford, about 84 properties together, about 44. 2.82% and then an 8.3%.
And you may have a Bedford, yeah, you may have a Bedford address, but you're actually paying taxes to the town of North Castle. So that Bedford, as he said, is only about 40 homes. So when you say, well, I live in Bedford, does that mean I have an increase? You may have the 2.61 as opposed to the 8.34, depending upon who you pay your taxes to.
Right. And then finally, Mount Pleasant with a decrease of 3.78% in their tax rate.
Which is the first we've seen in a long time.
Yep. So just a little historical information about the percentage increase on a year-to-year basis. It can really shift year-to-year based on your assessed value. Okay, if you take a look back in Bedford in 15-16, an increase of 12.18% in their tax rate. So if Bedford being only 44 properties, if there's a sale that's significantly above assessed value or significantly below assessed value, it can really shift your total assessed value and your share of the tax levy on a year-to-year basis. You really, Bedford's a great example where it goes up, it went down, up, down, down. You really see that shift. This year's a little different. Town of North Castle's assessed value has increased, whereas Mount Pleasant has, throughout the years, Mount Pleasant has been pretty level in assessed value, okay? Whereas North Castle has been decreasing. So you see that kind of shift in the levy goes from North Castle to Mount Pleasant. In these 3 years here, you can really see that because the assessed value of North Castle decreased, Mount Pleasant has been pretty consistent and a little increased. You see they've taken more of a share of the tax levy, whereas North Castle hasn't, okay? This year's a little different. North Castle had an extreme increase in assessed value, whereas Mount Pleasant, again, has been pretty consistent and lower. So that shift really came, this year went from Mount Pleasant to North Castle in terms of the share of that tax levy. That increase of $1.6 million in the tax levy, the majority of that goes shifted to North Castle, whereas in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been more towards Mount Pleasant. Better? Got it?
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay.
It was very good.
And even in years when we had a zero budget, this is usually when Jen translates to English for me. Even in years when we had a zero budget, which was this year, a tax levy of 1%, but a zero budget, you can see that changes in assessed value really increased the share of the total increase. In
So the struggle that Kelly and I face, because we pay taxes in our own towns where we live, right? And we're aware of the impact of school taxes on homeowners. We say, if you had an $800,000 home in each of these 4 towns, what is going to be the tax rate increase for each for an $800,000 home? We just picked a random number and we said you can go up or down depending upon. And when we looked at that, even when we had the 0% budget to budget increase, in Mount Pleasant, we still had an increase in taxes. And so it's like, how do you have a 0% budget to budget increase and an increase in taxes? Because the assessed value shifted, it was higher in Mount Pleasant, so Mount Pleasant was taking a larger portion of that tax base, right? So even during those times, I mean, it was frustrating to us. So I was actually like really happy to see Mount Pleasant at a minus 3.78 for once. Just a little bit of a reprieve in the constant increase in their taxes. But even still, you know, I looked at that time that we had the 0% budget to budget increase, I said, well, if a student is going to Pleasantville in that particular year to go to school versus somebody who lives in Pleasantville and comes to Armonk, are they paying more taxes to come to Byram Hills than they are to go to Pleasantville? And it was a one-year snapshot, but I was shocked to see that they were actually paying more in taxes on an $800,000 home to go to Pleasantville than somebody was to come to Armonk. So, you know, we're that deep into the taxes and watching the impact on what you're paying is all we really want to say. We're geeking out on that. Yes, we're making sure. So this is something that we've been really proud of for years and years. If you take a look at this, these are dollars below the maximum. So almost every single district will go out to their tax levy limit. That means if they are allowed to grow their budget by 2.8% or 4.6%, they will grow their budget by that amount because they're afraid if I give up money and if I leave money on the table for the school district, if I leave it out there with the taxpayers, we may not recoup it. What happens if we have increases in enrollment or we have some decreased state aid, all of this stuff. So they're looking at building their nest eggs so that for those days, and sometimes those districts are not even building their nest eggs, they're just paying out their expenses, right? Because it's very difficult. For us, we looked at what we needed to spend. So you'll notice that we spent sometimes just $15,000 below the tax levy limit. At other times, 1.3 million below the tax levy limit, which meant that we did not go out to the taxpayers that year for the 1.3 million. We said, we think we can cover it in our budget, which we think is really responsible, balanced budgeting. This year, we are going to the tax levy limit, which is 1.93%. It's not like the 4.59% that you saw in 2018-19, I get it. But we do have an increase in enrollment, and it is the first time in all of this time that we are going to the tax levy limit. When you have additional sections, I mean, our elementary schools right now, where we typically would have 7 or 8 sections, we're now having 10 sections. Of kindergarten kids coming in, for example. So the staffing and everything else that we're needing to do that increases our budget. And our enrollment, as I said, is shifting. 2023-24, you'll see we're expecting about 2,349 students. The enrollment is only pretty much going up, but I would say by the time you get here, these kids haven't been born yet, so it's really hard to say whether they're, how they're going to be impacting us. We also know that we have some construction going on right now, potentially at Airport Campus over near the airport. They are going to be building some townhomes there. We have Eagle Ridge, which is IBM property, supposed to have some townhomes there as well. Mariani, even though you see them digging that all up, there have been plans and now there are no approved quite plans yet. So even though they had something approved in the past, it's kind of like starting over there. I don't know why they cleared that property, but everybody thinks like something, they're expecting something, but I don't think anything's happening yet. And just other little building around the area as well. And by the way, we are still about $500 to $600 students less than at our maximum. So we do have a little bit of room to grow there. So what do we hope for? This was my predecessor's statement. Every student will have the opportunities afforded our graduating seniors. We hope they have more opportunities. Our programs and services and mostly our students are a benchmark for success. And I encourage you to go to the website for 2 things, to look at curriculum departments and also to look at a special recognition document which really outlines all of the things that have been happening in the district. It's pretty special. It's from our deputy superintendent. That is it. I encourage you please to go out to vote. The PTSA is going to do curbside babysitting, so anybody who wants to pull up, thank you to the PTSA for supporting that. know that we have about 11,000 voters. And on a year where we do not have a contested election for board members, we sometimes get about 400 people coming out. So anybody who can come out to express their opinion matters to us. It matters a lot. And we have 2 board seats that are open this year, and our 2 incumbents, Lara Stengel, who's the current president of the board, and Lori Canner, the vice president, are both running for their seats again. So please do take the time to come out and vote. And thanks so much for listening today. That's it. Tuesday, May 16th.
All right. Thank you. We are really lucky to have such invested leaders. I know that we all feel that way, so thank you. I can't believe all that you know about the budget.
I came a long way from teaching at Grell.
Angela, can you just come up for a second? I have to show you guys that we didn't plan this, but I can't believe that when we walked in today, this is what we look like. I walked in, I was like, oh my God, I said, I put this on last minute.
And I said, oh, she was wearing springy clothes. Let me put beige pants on today.
So this is how in tune we all are with one another. And then Jen is also on the color wheel with us. So. So just before we shift over to hear about the humanities programs, I want to remind everyone that we have an 8th grade Washington trip coming up. It is May 10th, 11th, and 12th. It is really close. Our kids, our students are really excited. Our teachers and faculty and parents are really excited. We've done this trip for now, how many years?
Over 50.
Angelo used to run it.
Not 50 years ago. But it's a long time, like the 70s. It was started in the 70s.
Yep. And so after a 3-year hiatus, but it'll be 4 years since the last time we went, we'll be going and returning to Washington. Boston is in June 1st.
June 1st and 2nd.
Yep, we'll be going to Boston. Again, thank you to parents and thank you to faculty for the chaperoning, the support. There's a spaghetti dinner coming up this Friday. It is a fundraiser for those trips. So students have been selling, they sold tickets, and I think we can even sell them curbside. It's a grab and go or grab and stay, so that we found that it's actually helpful to some families if they can take their dinners. And we're doing that also for the pancake breakfast, which isn't a pancake breakfast anymore, it's just a breakfast with a lot of good food. So just so everyone knows, we've shifted slightly how we do it. You can stay, there is service. Our students love to be waiters and waitresses, but there also is an opportunity to take the food and head home or head on the road if there's a need to do that as well. So we invite everyone to attend. So we also now, like I mentioned, have 3 really phenomenal chairs. Dr. Layden, I corrected that because Jen just received her doctorate this year. Mr. Smith, Dwayne Smith, and then Mrs. Stahl, Melissa Stahl, who have worked together, and I really say this, they're brilliant in what they've done. They have brought programs here, what Jenna said, because of need and for opportunity for our students. And when our students dream big, they can dream big with the support of these programs that we have fostered and developed with their vision. So I hand it's not the microphone.
Okay. So my name is Dwayne Smith, and I chair the English department, run the department 6 through 12, and work very closely with Dr. Layden and Melissa Stahl to help bring humanities here to our secondary students. You know, one of the things that we keep in mind is this mission statement that HCC has as an essential question, which is highlighted by things like active learning, risk-taking, helping students embrace rigor, and then also helping students maintain a healthy and balanced mindset. Those are things that are at the back burner, I would think, of everything that we're doing when we plan. One of the things that I want to highlight for you is that we work together an incredibly, I think, just a lot at this point. We're working together all the time. I think since 2015, the 3 of us really started fostering a relationship together where we think about our departments not as silos, but as part of a group that really does have the ability to transform the education for students. And it came at a time when really a lot of educators, students, parents were only talking about STEM. And we're only talking about what's happening in things like robotics, in the science classrooms, and mathematics. And the humanities felt like it was something that needed a little bit of a kickstart. So I hope from today's presentation, some of what you'll get is a sense of how we've tried to kickstart what we do in our programs. One of the things that we think about is really the relevancy of our work. And for some people, they think about what the experience was in a classroom 20, 30 years ago and expect that it's going to be exactly the same. And I'll tell you from the English language arts standpoint, things have changed tremendously. The classroom experience involves a lot of activities that go beyond just reading and writing, but talk about speaking and listening, talk about the use of computer skills and gaining 21st century literacy. These are all things that we've started to inform students about, to inform families about, and it really informs our work. I'll bring you up.
Thank you. So to zero in on social studies for a moment, as Dwayne said, sort of back in the day, school was maybe a lot of memorizing and then telling you what I memorized. And we've really transformed our thinking over the past number of years to really about thinking. How are we thinking about what we're learning? And so in social studies, we've developed common language from grades 6 to 12 that identifies historical thinking skills. So the students begin as 6th graders working through these skills, building on them all the way through 12th grade. So it's a nice sort of continuous message. And it's really things like looking at evidence and thinking critically. Where did this come from? Who wrote it? What was their point of view? What was their intended audience? And asking questions, because in the real world, we know we're continually interacting with information, but we have to ask questions. We can't just sort of accept. But we also want to weigh different perspectives. And so that's sort of a driving force. We're also asking questions like, why do things happen? There are multiple causes. There's multiple reasons why things occur. And why do things change or stay the same? A turning point versus a trend. And all of these sort of skills help us understand the past, but they really help us understand the present just as much. And then how can we make it an intelligent argument based on using those skills and really explaining kind of what we know and what we understand. And so the students will see this language all the way through and really start to master those skills and think of social studies as really something that builds those skills. It's not just knowing a bunch of stuff. We need to do a little bit better than that now. Now, just here's a fun example. We've been integrating the middle school and high school a lot. And one of the things that we've done is in 7th grade, the kids learn all about how the Constitution was written, how the government works. And we also have a class in 12th grade, which is AP US Government. And so the teachers got together and they said, wouldn't it be great if we got these kids together in a way for some mentorship and sort of mutual learning. And so that developed into what we call sort of Congress in session. And the 7th graders learn how to write a bill and what goes into the bill making process. And the seniors come over and coach them and help them all the way through. And it goes all the way through the process until they actually vote and find out what happens. So I'll share a little bit. This is a video from a couple of years ago, but does a nice job of sort of highlighting the project.
7th graders are told that they are going to be members of the House of Representatives, and they're tasked with creating a piece of legislation that will affect change. And then they're working with those high school mentors to do a lot of the research and writing of the bills. And we do a live session in the auditorium with the high school students, and they're able to vote on a bill right then and there and hear the results in real time.
I loved gathering information for writing a bill. Now I also liked when we were voting, you could decide to defend or argue against other people's bills, and that was fun. You needed information to say this bill is good or bad, and you could also sway the public view.
I like to believe that the long-term seed planted with the 7th graders was seeing what we believe is the best in Byram Hill students. They were prepared, they were organized,
helping them without actually giving them the answer and like solving the problem for them and making sure that they were kind of the ones doing that so that they could feel like they played a really important role in it as well.
Walking around and watching the high schoolers and the 7th graders interact, there were really good discussions going on talking about the amendments.
My bill was that there should be security guards at main school entrances, and mine actually, out of 52 bills, was 1 out of 4 that passed into law.
It was rewarding because you kind of see where they're at now and just kind of all the things that they could do if they come back and are in the government class with Mr. Andriello.
So you get a little bit of a taste. What's fun is, so now we're in about the 4th year of doing this, so those kids are on the verge of becoming seniors now themselves, so they'll get to sort of give back. So that's been really fun. So we're looking for ways to sort of connect the experiences and kind of build the community. And then the last thing I'll mention has been a big focus what we've worked on this year, which is civic readiness. The New York State has come up with something they're calling the Civic Readiness Diploma Seal. And we're going to apply to participate in that as a district. And students who demonstrate their civic readiness can earn an extra sort of recognition or seal. But what's exciting about it is it's really a 6 to 12 initiative. So even though it's a seal you get when you graduate, we have 6th graders who are working on promoting the Sustainable Development Goals and learning about how to take action civically. We have the 7th graders learning all about Congress. We have the 8th graders who are learning about the muckrakers during the late 1800s and then applying that to sort of modern day. And it sort of goes throughout. But it's really about those real world skills. So not just did I learn the important content, but how do I apply it in a way that actually could make a difference for the society in which I live. So we're having a lot of fun sort of integrating that and making it feel real world for the kids. And I'll turn it over to Melissa.
So one of the common threads that goes through all of our departments is communication. I don't think anyone's ever signed up for a world language class because they want to complete a worksheet with a conjugated verb. And that's where we were a lot with our language program because the state hadn't updated its standards since 1996. So back in 2015, when we referenced that before, I started looking for things for our department to get a bigger, to develop that desire to engage for our students and get past that grammatical concept. And we embraced this concept of global competency, which recognizing perspectives, and you can see the thread going to Jen's department, and you'll see it in Dwayne's department, communicating ideas. How do you do that in an articulate way, whether you're doing in a formal setting or among friends? How do you investigate the world and look what's out there? And when you think about all of the languages, the French, Italian, or Spanish that we teach in all of the countries that are involved, or the areas that are involved, how do you investigate those areas? And then ultimately, how do you take action on that? What do you do? And Jen mentioned the UN SDGs, and how do those UN SDGs, and how do we make our world a better place? How does that play in world languages? So I started looking at that in 2015, and you'll hear about global competency again when we speak about the Global Scholars Program. But before the state started their new standards, we were working on this, and then the state came out with standards that, guess what, match this global competency. So we are all gelling together perfectly now. The state introduced these 3 modes of presentational, interpersonal, and interpretive modes. And basically what it is it takes foreign language or world language away from that complete the conjugated verb, put in the right definite article, what's the proper ending for this, and how do you actually use that language? Because I think everyone I talk to that's my age says, I can't say anything that I studied language for 6 years. And that's true. So they've introduced these proficiency levels of where students should be, whether they're in year 1, year 2, all the way up until year 6. And they start with the novice. And the middle school students should be leaving 8th grade about novice high, some of them dipping their toe into intermediate low, okay? And then at the high school, they progress through. By the time they leave 12th grade, they should be advanced low. Okay, some of them maybe, it's a bell curve. Some of them, the goal is to be advanced low. You might have a couple of that are a little bit below. And you can see what they can do at the different levels. So novice, when they're here in the middle school, they should be able to leave French, Italian, or Spanish class parroting something. So lists of words. They can identify a chair, a table, a camera. Can they repeat a whole sentence that they had studied and memorized, okay? Again, some students are better and they can do a little bit more, manipulate language a little bit more. Some students are still struggling to create whole sentences. And then you can see how they go through. So when you ask your 8th grader when you're on vacation, order in French when you're in Paris, they may not be able to do that because they haven't developed those skills. When they get into the middle school, they can develop their own sentence structure, their question formation. This goes into play with our presentational mode, which is what I'm doing. I'm presenting to you in a formal setting, okay? I can be speaking or I could be writing. If I had to write an essay, like they might have to do a DBQ in social studies or a comparative essay in English. Can they do that in the language? Interpersonal is if I were to have a side conversation with Dwayne right now, and he said something to me and I had to respond to it, that's an interpersonal conversation. And then the interpretive mode, which is you get an input, whether it's a video, an audio, or a written input, and how do you respond to that? So that's how we're training all these students, and we're actually building our curriculum now, since the state came out with new standards, to align to all of this. What does that look like now? And this is what's exciting. Here, our presentational writing, you know, one of the things that we really want to promote here at HCC is student choice. So they have to do these concepts called a one-pager, where they have to write about themselves and what's important to them and what are their passions. One of the things that we get kids to engage with is, I don't enjoy ball sports, everybody knows this, so I would rather talk about the sport that's closer to my heart, and then I really want to develop with my language. We allow kids to do that. Whether in 6th grade, where they get the exploratory of just 11 days of French, Italian, Spanish, and linguistics, they create their book. Whether they're in 8th grade, where they're writing those modeled sentences that are given to them about their family members or what their sports are or what they like to do in their free time. Here they can write a full paragraph, that presentational writing, where it's more like an English essay where they have to develop some ideas. This was just a little bit close up of what you can see. We're actually exceeding the Novice 4 goals for what the the state wants us to do, because they're writing full sentences and they're writing full paragraphs there. Just close up from it a little bit. And then when you get to the high school, one of the things that we have is that we've got high school students, just like Jen had seniors coming down to talk to work with the middle schoolers. We have 10th graders writing to middle schoolers, and they're writing back and forth. So they do their emails, they're able to write back and forth to each other, but then also we have one teacher who is partnered with a school in Barcelona, and she takes those same 8th graders and 10th graders who've practiced writing back and forth to each other, and then she says, now you're going to write to people in Spain. And so here you can see the emails that are actually to Spain. This is a very sophisticated email, okay? This is a different level. It's actually a 10th grade email, but you can see that we step them up and we scaffold all the learning for them. Again, then they actually get to speak to their sister school in Barcelona. So they start, 8th and 10th graders start speaking to each other here, Byram Hills and Byram Hills student. They practice that, they get used to the spontaneous speech, and then we take them out and we have them introduced to people who actually speak Spanish in Spain, and they partner that. Lastly, we talked about the UN SDGs. If you haven't seen the graphics, there are 17 of them, to save the world by 2030. And this is high school work, but it's interpretive reading and writing. And what is that UN SDG? What are the goals of them? And how can you develop a plan or take action in a target language to save something? So here we've got the environment issues that the French classes do at the high school, and they're promoting taking action on saving the environment. And they're doing all of this in the target language.
So I mentioned before that the landscape in the classroom has changed. You're going to hear a lot of similarities with what Dr. Layden and Ms. Stahl just mentioned. We have 4 different categories that the state says in the English language arts that we have to help students master. Reading, writing, speaking and listening, and then language use. But also what we're bringing in are a lot of those global competencies that have become part of the thread that ties us all together. I want to share with you something that is sort of a hallmark of our students here at HCC right now. This is the 3rd year that we have been part of a program called Written Out Loud. And thanks to the BHEF, they were instrumental in bringing this to us. We were able to bring in an outside program that really teaches writing in a different way than any of us had experienced. It's based on the kind of movie pitches that a writer would give when one goes to Hollywood, where all of the ideas are orally presented. None of the ideas are written down on paper at any point at the beginning of the process. It really is reminiscent of a lot of the brainstorming that we want students to be doing, but it does take a lot of the pressure off of students where they don't feel the need to have to put those words down on the paper or on the screen right away. And what our students do through Written Out Loud is really amazing. Over the 3 years, what we've done is taken an outside program and fused it into our curriculum. That was one of the things that the BHEF worked with us on and really wanted us to do with this program. And we thought, let's pilot it for a year, which we did in the first year, and this was during the pandemic. So students were doing all of this work on computer screens. And eventually, let's try to get it into our program. And the end result is that the students work in cooperative teams to actually write original stories that get published. So each student then gets a book that is theirs. It is something that I don't know of any other district in the area that's doing this quite in the same way that we are. So I want to give you a little bit of a snippet of what that was like for our students. We were approached by one of the BHEF board members.
Renee Levine, she had experienced it with her son.
Something that the students just signed up for. They were interested in creative writing, had a phenomenal experience with it, and for us it was like, let's look into this. Let's see what this is all about.
Written Out Loud is a new kind of writing program. We call it a storytelling program because we really focus on the underlying art and craft of out loud storytelling that lies not just beneath writing movies and screenplays, but really almost any kind of narrative art. So musicals, videos that kids see on YouTube, video games. At the heart of all of it, we believe at Written Out Loud is this craft of out loud storytelling.
Linda and I wrote up a grant. We went through the whole process with the foundation.
We went back and forth to try to figure out how to make it work last year because it was hybrid and not all the students were there. So we did it as almost like an elective if they wanted to do it.
What I saw in that pilot program was students sitting together, talking about storytelling, building stories together, and then ultimately doing the work of writing down those stories and publishing a book.
So this year it's now a part of the curriculum. So we're actually incorporating it into our short story unit, and the Education Foundation made that possible.
They had been slowly building their own sense of who they are and what they want through our lens, and by the time we got to Written Out Loud, I mean, it was the creativity was pouring out of them.
They came in and they introduced the skin jump to the students. And that was kind of a new concept to me too, the idea of where is the character's most vulnerable moment? And that's where we as readers or as viewers can attach ourselves to that character, right? Then they walked us through the ordinary world and how in most stories, characters start in this ordinary world and then there's a call to adventure. And now we read one of our short stories and we ask the kids to identify those storytelling elements in those stories. So that's kind of the development process. And at the end, they'll have a story where they've all written a piece of it, they've all collaborated.
I'm excited to see what I could do with those original ideas that we came up with at first.
So I'm going to stop there for a second. You heard Ms. Fuller just mention a couple of the terms that are used in the program, the skin jump, the call to adventure. What's exciting to me is that the students working in this program are also starting to see those same terms in what they're reading. And the way we fuse this is it's part of a short story unit where the students are taught some of these terms. And really the skin jump is really that moment in time when you're watching a story where you start to empathize with that main character, where you start to feel passionately for that character and care about what happens to him, to her. And that part of it is really an important moment, whether it's in a film, whether it's in a book. Our students are becoming more versed with that, but the other part of this is really the social emotional piece of this, students working together in collaborative teams. There are so many elements of this that I feel have benefit, and when the students have come up to the high school now, having done this program, it's great for me, I teach 9th grade this year, to be able to talk to the students about the creativity that they were exploring with Written Out Loud, and to be able to use that in the lessons that we do up at the high school as well. Skip this again. Just to show you a couple of things about how things actually connect with my partners over here in the humanities world, the UN SDGs are a big part of what we do in the English language arts as well. In the 6th grade, I know the students are introduced to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they work with that throughout the year. But they also do this in 9th grade, where they are given the opportunity to give a public speech about a global issue. So they have to pick one of those Sustainable Development Goals, drill down, do some initial research into an issue that they feel is important, and then deliver a speech that will ultimately be one that they come up without notes. Some of them may have some note cards or slideshows behind them, images behind them. But what we're really working on is helping students build that capacity for communication, just like they're doing in the World Language Department. I'm going to skip here for a second. The next part about this is really what we developed together. And this is something that we're all very proud of. This is a program that started with an idea, started with a kind of a moonshot idea that the three of us had. We went up to the think tank at Harvard, which was on global competency, and came back and said, wouldn't it be great if we had some form of a program for students who are interested in the humanities that united what we do? And so our idea was to take, and I know you saw this slide before, but to take these global competency quadrants that are part of the Asia Society's model and fuse it with something that we also know our students need, which are the mindsets and dispositions to help them be successful when they leave us at the end of high school. And we initially had, I think, about 12 to 15 different mindsets and dispositions that we were hoping students to, would really capture the learning and hoping that they would master. But over the years, we've kind of whittled this down into what we feel are the most important ones. And those are the comfort with ambiguity. So oftentimes, we are giving students opportunities to experience ambiguity in ways that are going to help them grow. Empathy is probably, I think, something we use all the time. I say this in the English language arts, and I know it's true in social studies and world languages as well. I read books because I want to empathize with others. I want to experience the world that is outside of my own lens, and I sometimes read books because I want to corroborate what I actually know and look in and look within. But empathy is such a big part of what we do, whether it's in speaking, conversation, writing. This is something that we want students to have a capacity for. The desire to engage, that goes well beyond just motivation. Engagement is something that goes back to something I heard Ms. Stahl say, which is that students are more engaged when they have choice and voice. So going back to her disdain for ball sports or something like that, we know that when we give students choice and agency, that they run with that and that they have a better experience in our classrooms. And so the Global Scholars Program is really about diving into student choice, giving them opportunities to explore their interests and learn new things. And then, of course, we know that not every program and not every project that students work on is going to be the ultimate success. We want students to have skills so that when they run into roadblocks, they know how to handle it. When they run into problems, they know how to get around them and they can be resilient. And so those four mindsets really define, I think, the work that we've done together. I don't know if you'd like to, we show the video, but did you want to do anything about the years in the Global Scholars Program?
Maybe just show a couple of the samples so they can see the work.
So let's look first here.
Just to give you some context, well, this is on the left. In the second year of the program, students get to choose an issue that they care deeply about, and some choose to work individually, some choose to work in groups. And they develop their own plan to address it. So this was Sydney Black, who is just about to graduate, and this was her Changemaker project.
31.9 million tons. That is the amount of mismanaged plastic that ended up in ocean and land ecosystems in a single year, 2010. This waste directly affects the wildlife and animals that live in it, leading to their death or injury. Local park leaders and organizers made it clear to me in empathy interviews that this wastefulness is caused by a lack of awareness and a lack of education. Right now, in order to solve this lack, a key solution is park cleanups. Oftentimes, these only engage the most devoted environmentalists. So, all citizens of Westchester, New York need to be inspired to minimize their plastic waste, as individual action is a key component in motivating people to be less wasteful and take care of the environment. I am Sydney, and this is my solution, Plastics Go. It will be an app similar to Pokemon Go or iNature. It will identify a plastic bottle using image recognition technology. In order to continually engage users, there will be an incentive. Once they collect 10 bottles, they will reach C-Star. At 50, they will reach Clownfish, etc. It will also incorporate education through a quick fun fact of the day. This non-overwhelming presentation of information will make it easier for users to remember. To reach local citizens, my target audience, I will work with local parks, such as St. George's Park or Westchester Parks Foundation Parks, to advertise through posters at their parks, and develop social media. To make sure these techniques are working, I will keep track of success of my app through the number of users as well as overall weight of plastic picked up by users. Due to the expenses of creating and publishing an app, I will need funds to create it. For the image recognition technology behind the app, I will be modifying open source code, so no funding is needed for that. An Apple Store license will cost $99 per year. Finally, for app branding, I need $300. This will be used for logos and graphics. Together, we can work to eliminate plastic waste, getting into nature and harming wildlife. So let's go, plastics go.
So each of our students in year 2 do something similar. We partnered a couple of years ago with the Changemaker Project, and so they're with students from around the world giving pitches just like this to secure funding. The students then get that funding, take that funding and put it into action. Sydney was one of the students who did something that I know we had talked about when we first sort of dreamed up this program, is wouldn't it be cool to see students fusing some 21st century technology into a project where they're trying to do something that's beneficial for the environment in this case. And she really took it to heart. I mean, she was learning how to code and how to manipulate that code, and that was something that she did on her own. Talk about the desire to engage. This is exactly the kind of work we want students to be involved in, and something that I know is going to set her up for success. Now this second, do you want to set the stage for this second one? Yeah.
Or can I continue with what Sydney
You can,
did this
yeah.
year? So in year 3 of Global Scholars, when the students are seniors, we actually were working with them to develop their leadership skills as our new mission to create citizens and leaders of the 21st century. So we take the single student who worked individually as in the Changemaker, and we put them onto teams for the Global Social Leaders, which is another international competition that they work with to create more change. And this year, Sydney, with that resilience piece, had to pivot, and there's actually a pivot award with the Global Social Leaders, is how do you take your sustainability issue and what do you do with it when you have to find 2 other people to work with? So her and 2 other classmates decided to still work with sustainability, and what they've done is they were working on getting sustainable menstrual products in the schools here, and they wanted to educate people on using sustainable menstrual products, and that wasn't going so well for them. They got a lot of pushback just because of scheduling and things like that and affordability of these products, but they made some small advances, but then they also partnered with the Armonk and Sustainability Initiative, and then they were doing videos that were going out broadcasted on cable TV. They just recently did an assembly for Coman Hill, the entire K2 school, on how to actually recycle and at lunchtime, and how to put all of their recycling and the landfill items in the proper receptacles. And so they really did a lot with it, and now tomorrow they are going to submit to the Global Social Leaders, another international competition where we are the only American school participating in it, and they've met with them all along, so it's kind of exciting for them.
It's also exciting, I think, for all of us to hear that for a very long time we've had the science research which has been just so important to our kids, but now we see, as you guys mentioned, that we've now shifted and provided another opportunity for our kids to humanities, and to know that I didn't know that they were enrolled in these competitions that you found, which it's just such a robust program at school. Will we be hearing if there's any?
June 14th. June 14th. June 14th,
Awesome.
before they're
That's
done.
great. Yeah. And then maybe just quickly on the other one?
Sure.
So here's an example of a team that worked together, and it's great because it really incorporated some world language too. If you remember back in 2020, they were all knocking on our door to answer the census. And so what we had discovered is whether or not you take the census really has a big impact on your community. The kids did a ton of research, and they found out that there are certain targeted communities where people are afraid to answer the census. And this particular group discovered that particularly Latino residents of nearby Mount Kisco were very hesitant. So they partnered with the school in Mount Kisco, the high school Fox Lane there, with those students and with community members, including the mayor, and they developed a PSA in Spanish to encourage those people to take the census. So here's just a little clip of that.
El censo es una encuesta que determinará el financiamiento federal para importantes servicios comunitarios y ayudan a apoyar a las familias y la representación en los Estados Unidos. Tener una precisión recuento de todas las personas en los Estados Unidos.
Los fondos distribuidos a las escuelas se utilizan para almuerzos gratuitos y reducidos para los estudiantes.
Determinará la cantidad de asientos en cada estado recibirá en la Cámara de Representantes, lo que afectará las leyes aprobadas en el futuro que afectarán a la comunidad inmigrante.
Proporciona fondos a muchos puntos de venta diferentes, como hospitales y atención médica, programas educativos y empresas locales.
Los resultados de censo financian programas como inglés como segundo idioma, embarazo adolescente, servicios de atención médica y apoyo legal.
La distribución de más de 675 mil millones de dólares de fondos federales que llegan a nuestra comunidad a través del censo se usarán para beneficiar a nuestra comunidad.
I'm just going to stop there for a minute. I mean, one of the things I want to highlight is that this whole project came out of something that we were working on with our students where we teach them about the design thinking process. And this was done during the pandemic. So the students had to organize the various speakers that were going to be part of the video, had to communicate back and forth with the students at Fox Lane, had to do all of this work in putting this video together, really without the luxury that we have of being in the same room together right now. The design thinking process has become a staple of what we do in our program. It is really one that our students tell us. The graduates of our program come back and say, hey, I'm taking design thinking at college, or it's amazing how many times people wanted to ask me questions about the Global Scholars Program or design thinking when I was doing my college interviews. These are skills that we know are being used in the workforce, and so it's really wonderful that we have 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that are using them now, getting really versatile with how the process actually can help them do a better product and put together a better final presentation for whether it's a pitch or in the case of the students who just did the project we were talking about, something that was going to be played in a community where it was desperately needed. So this has been just a fantastic part of our program, I think, to be able to collaborate on this. And I think
that's it.
That brings us to the end. I don't know if you have any questions for us about the humanities, but we're happy to take any.
I was hoping that when we presented this, you would be able to see, and you can, loud and clear, how it begins in 6th grade with the work that's done in the languages where the children are first exposed to different languages and asked to make a selection. in social studies, where we see our students really become global citizens, become aware of the sustainable goals, UN sustainable goals, how they're engaged in all their writing. And then within all their experiences at the middle school, this is fostered and nurtured. And then that's where they go to the high school, which has a strong connection. It's a secondary 6-12 connection that allows our students to explore and really pursue what they believe, whether it's science or English or social studies. They're all the opportunities. And now with the startup program, we have allowed our kids to pursue their dreams and their interests in the most rich, robust way. So are there any questions that you guys have? I know it's a small group. I wish we're good.
Is the Global Scholars Program like an elective that they choose to do, or okay?
So as a 9th grader, they're introduced to some of the programs that they can sign up for, and just like I think science research also starts in 10th grade, they have the option to sign up for it. Now the difference with our program is that we designed it purposely so that there's multiple entry points. A student could come in as a 10th grader and take that first year of Global Scholars and get an introduction to global competency, the issues that are going to be something that they might study in the program. But they might decide, in 11th grade, I really would rather do startup. That's something that's more my speed, and so I want to shift over to startup. And maybe after a year of startup, they say, you know what, I want to go back to Global Scholars. We'll bring them back in for that second year as seniors. And so we have a number of students who might not be in the same grade as their counterparts, but are taking Global Scholars, and that's something that's great. We just didn't want students to be locked out of the program at any point.
I'd just like to say, as a parent, thank you so much for all the work and thought, really thought that you've put in over the years to create these programs. It's so wonderful to know that our kids are in such a safe, happy thoughtful place. Thank you.
It's all a partnership, so thank you. It's the support of the BHEF, the PTSA, the administration, and just together what we can do with our good ideas. So. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions about the middle school? I don't know if there's anything pressing that anyone has any questions about just middle school stuff. Yeah, the trip's coming, like we mentioned. Moving up is at the end of June. We have the state test next week.
Geography B.
Oh, the Geography B is May 4th.
Yeah.
It's going to be taking place, so we brought the Geography B back. It's a locally run B, but we'll have that contest taking place on the 4th. On the 5th, Written Out Loud will be celebrated in the 8th grade. So the spring's a lot of fun.
The 9th, you have your 5th grade parents coming up.
Yep. And then we have like just what's taking place with our kids. They're having a really good time with all the opportunities that are they're involved with now as well. So it's a good place to be, and it's great. Spring is here, except for this weekend when it's going to be raining. So okay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.